This morning's scripture reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. It is Revised Standard Version. For it will be as when a man going on a journey called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I know you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not winnow. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what it is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You know that I reap where I have not sowed and gather where I have not winnowed. Then you ought to have what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who will more be given, and he will have abundance, but from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. There men will weep and gnash their teeth. Today, we welcome Pastor John Chamberlain this morning. He is retired and a member of the Presbytery of San Francisco, who has served the United Methodist Church in the Bay Area for over 40 years. He is currently the National Coordinator of Eastern Timor Religious Outreach. He will preach us a parable of the talent.
Well, it's very good to be in worship with all of you this morning. I want to thank Pastor Don Smith for inviting me to his pulpit. I do have the distinction of, I used to tell members of the Presbytery of San Francisco that I have the distinction of being the only teaching elder in the presbytery that's never pastored a Presbyterian church. I pastored United Methodist churches for about 40 years. Jesus was a storyteller. You may have noticed that in talking to folks, Jesus didn't use a lot of abstract theological language. He talked story, as they say in Hawaii, told parables. And his parables, then and now, often were intended to bring about a startling reevaluation of all that we have and are. By slipping in scandalous, paradoxical, or surprising elements into his parables, Jesus meant to break through conventional ways of thinking and behaving. He wanted to open us up to new and different ways of seeing reality and offer us the opportunity to experience life in a deeper way. Now, to understand this morning's parable, you need to know what a talent was. A talent was the largest form of currency known in the ancient Near East. Even 1 talent was a considerable fortune. According to my New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, a talent was worth more than 15 years' wages of a laborer. So a talent was a lot of money. In the parable of the talents, Jesus tells a story about 3 servants, each of whom were entrusted with different amounts of money by their master. The first 2, although they were given very different sums, nevertheless invested their respective talents and ended up doubling their money. However, the 3rd servant, seeing that he'd received less than the others, buried his talent in the ground. Later, when it came time for him to give an account of himself, he said, I just had this lesser amount, hardly anything at all, so I didn't do anything with it. The master replies, "You wicked and lazy servant." Sounds kind of harsh, doesn't it? He says, "You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sowed and gather where I have not winnowed. You ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming, I should have received what was mine with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him that has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away." I find this parable disturbing, don't you? I mean, we feel that servant number 3 got shafted, right? We identify with the 1 talent guy. After all, most of us don't feel that we've been overburdened with a multitude of talents. So we easily identify with the little fellow. Besides that, he behaved the way that we would have behaved. The 3rd servant acted very responsibly in what he did. He didn't play fast and loose with someone else's money. The money didn't belong to him. He was very ethical. He acted very responsibly. He was careful. He had no right to risk his master's money wheeling and dealing in wild, speculative ventures. Darn it, he did what was right. He did what we would have done. Yet, so thrilled was this absentee landlord after returning from his Singapore cruise to discover that the first two servants had produced good results with his money. So thrilled was he that he let them keep it, all of it. Enter the joy of your master, is the way he put it. The third servant had good results too. He managed to keep his boss's money intact. He didn't risk it in crackpot, get-rich-quick schemes. He didn't loan it out at usurious rates to his flaky, irresponsible friends. No, when the boss got home, his savings were safe and sound. What's wrong with that? The third servant didn't lose the talent given to him. He merely did nothing with it. When asked to report back, the third servant said, "Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, gathering where you did not winnow. You're one tough Lord. I know that. Here's your talent back. Now, pat me on the head and tell me what a good boy I've been." That's the parable. So, what's this story about? I'll give you a hint. It's not about the stock market. It's about the way we live. For faced with the givens of life that Jesus called gifts, we usually start looking around and we make these invidious comparisons with other people. And when we see the gifts and talents that others have been given, we begin to feel cheated, ripped off, as if we haven't been given all that we've got coming to us. But Jesus says we're to abandon this way of thinking. Rather, he urges us to make use of, enjoy, and be thankful for the gifts and talents that we have received. For everything that we have and are comes to us from our loving Creator, who simply gives us gifts. To be sure, we aren't all given the same gifts or even the same number of gifts, and they may not be the gifts we want, but we're all given good gifts just the same. And we're assured that if we use these good gifts to bring forth more good, we will be rewarded with life in abundance, life as God intends for it to be. It's all a matter of trusting the basic goodness of God. And calling our Creator Father, actually, Abba in the Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. Abba is a term of intimacy and endearment. So scholars tell us that it would be better translated Papa or Daddy. But in calling our Creator Abba, Jesus simply meant that God relates to us as a father. That is, as one who intends good for his children and is at work to bring forth more good. Of course, a father's gifts are not always desired or even understood, but these gifts present good possibilities nonetheless. Now, I suspect some of you may be thinking, yes, but some people get more gifts, and some people get better gifts. Worse yet, some people get more gifts and all their gifts are better. That's not fair. It's not fair. And you're right. Life is unfair, and we don't get what we deserve. Thank God, because nobody deserves anything. What did anyone ever do to deserve life? Apparently, the universe isn't run according to our justice meter. You see, it's really a question of what kind of world is it that we live in? Do we live in a world of earning, merit, and deserving? Or do we live in a world of undeserved goodness, a world of gifts? Life is a gift. Earning, merit, or deserving has nothing to do with it. I think this understanding of life subverts our ordinary assumptions about earning, merit, and deserving. I think it wreaks havoc with them, calls them into question. I think it absolutely destroys the whole idea of a meritocracy, which might be represented as IQ plus effort equals merit. That's how our meritocracy is represented. IQ plus effort equals merit. Really? Well, just consider our intellectual abilities, for example. How much pride should we take in them? We didn't earn, merit, or deserve them. They were gifts. For an intelligent person to claim that he or she deserved their rewards is roughly equivalent to claiming that he or she deserved to win the lottery. Saying they were blessed or even lucky would be a more accurate assessment. Well, all right, okay, but what about all the effort that we put into our achievements? What about that? Can't we take some pride in all the work we've done? Developing our gifts and talents is hard work, right? Can't we take some credit for that? Well, yes, some. But let's not get too carried away either. I think a sense of proportion is needed. Best we recognize that even the capacity for hard work itself is a gift, the result of inherited endowments and upbringing. No one deserves to be born with robust, good health that hard work requires. Strength and vigor are gifts. Nor does anyone deserve to be born into a family who values education, has access to good schools, and can afford to send them to college. All these things are gifts. Wondering if any of you may have read a book that was on the New York Times bestseller list recently. It was by a historian by the name of John Matcham. And the book was called The Soul of America, The Battle for Our Better Angels. And in this book, he makes this comment. He says, whatever one's class status, there's a tendency for many in this country to think that they're a Horatio Alger hero, an emblem of rugged individualism and singular success. And he goes on to contend that the American ideal of self-made men, so central to our national mythology, is wrong. It's bogus because it overlooks the role that other people and institutions, such as the church and government, play in creating the conditions that make for success. A little reflection, and we become aware that we are anything but self-made. We know that there's no such thing, really, as a self-made human being. Even our culture and country are gifts, something we're born into. We stand on the shoulders of those who've gone before, and in the words of that wonderful Afro-American mystic and theologian Howard Thurman, eat the fruit from trees that we ourselves did not plant. Life is not something we earn, merit, or deserve. It's a gift, freely given. It's a matter of grace. And what's the appropriate attitude toward this gift? Gratitude and humility. Now, I chuckle a little bit to myself when I say humility because I know it's not very fashionable to talk about humility these days. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard a sermon on humility. It's come to have a rather negative connotation, suggesting some kind of low self-esteem or perhaps a pose that etiquette requires us to assume in certain situations. But this hasn't always been the case. Historically, humility is considered one of the 7 traditional Christian virtues, one that reflects our true place in the scheme of things. Humility and human come from the same Latin root word, humus, which means of the earth or ground. And as you'll recall from the story in Genesis, God created the first human being out of the ground. And when God breathed into that, it became a living soul.